Perfect. Welcome to this new video. In this one, I will explain you the DLL injection process injection technique. Okay, that's a typical technique used in malware development. Okay, so basically, let's just start. Okay, here in our techniques page, you can find a malware technique database with a lot of malware techniques and one new technique each week. Okay, so basically here you have the different plans and all the options to try to learn and understand all these techniques. For each technique we have all this information, so can be so useful if you want to learn malware development. Okay, so let's just start. The DLL injection, it's a technique where basically we inject a DLL file that it's like executable but not a exe into a running process to execute code within its context. Okay, first of all, what's the difference between exe and a DLL? Basically, a exe, you can execute a exe, and this exe creates a new process where your code is running. In a DLL, it's a little bit different. You need to load your DLL, that it's like a library. It's a dynamic link library. It's like a library. You need to load your DLL into a running process. Okay, you cannot execute yourself the DLL. You cannot do a double click in your file. You need to inject your DLL into a running process, and this running process will execute in a new thread your DLL. Okay, so basically that's it. It's an interesting way to execute your code in a remote process. Here you can add notes. This is my note. No one will see it. And then this was for testing, but you see it. So basically, these are the steps of the technique. First of all, we get the process ID. Okay, we enumerate the process to find the process ID of the target. For example, notepad.exe will be the victim, will be the process where our DLL will be loaded. Sorry. Then we open the process. We get a handle to the target process with the open process function. In this case, to the notepad.exe process. Then we reserve space in the target process using the virtual alloc.ex function. Then we write the DLL path into that memory using the write process memory. Okay, we write the DLL complete path into the new memory space created with the virtual alloc.ex function in the remote process. After this, we resolve the load library a function. That it's the function from the kernel 32 used to load a DLL into your process. Okay, and basically we create a thread in the target process using create remote thread with loading library. What's the result? The load library function it's executed in the victim process with the parameter of your DLL path. What's the trick here? If you give me a second, this is in Spanish. Let's change this to English. If you execute this function, the unique parameter is the name of the module, the name of the DLL, the library module, a DLL file. So what happens when you call this function with the parameter of your DLL, this will load and execute your DLL inside the process that it's calling this function. So basically, if we create a remote thread in Notepad, calling the load library function with our DLL path into that memory, will execute the load library with our DLL path as the first parameter, and our DLL will be executed and loaded by the notepad.exe. Okay, so that's the code. Here we have the code, and now let's try this code execution in the Windows. Perfect. So perfect. Here we have all we need. This is the DLL of the path of the DLL to inject. We have here c evlil.dll, and basically we open a notepad process and we try to execute and inject this evil DLL inside it. Okay, if we open a process hacker application and we search for notepad, we can go into the modules page and we'll see that in the E we don't have any other library. So my bad, sorry. If we execute our DLL injection code, let's wait a second. my bad, we need to change. In this case, we're trying to inject the DLL into PowerShell. We change this to Notepad and we execute our code. The result, if forwards, DLL injection completed successfully. If we go to Process Hacker and we search for which modules are loaded, we can see here we have our DLL loaded, our evil.dll library loaded. Okay, so that's all for this technique. Here, keep in mind, this is the DLL that does nothing. Okay, this DLL doesn't do nothing. But here is important that you can do whatever you want in your code. Okay, you are injecting your code in a library, and this library is loaded into a target process. So with a simple library development, you can do whatever you want. You can execute a message box. You can execute the same functions that you can execute in a typical C++ desktop project. Okay, so basically that's all for this technique, and let's jump to the next one.